Welcome back, CSC 230, to part 4 of our EX16, our Wells lawn care layout that we're doing in Figma. And what we're going to do is start building our HTML page with our CSS and try to make it look like this. And it may not be exactly like this, but we're going to use this as our model. At least we have something to look at. So far, we've just been building things that I told you how to build or whatever. So now we're going to kind of build this, and we can look at some things, and we know that the header is basically 160. We know that the nav, I think, was 44. We know that we want this stuff to go across the page. This is going to be right aligned. This is going to be somewhat left aligned, at least the way we have it so far. So we could probably use flex up here. This can just have buttons that are right aligned, and we could probably just use a padding inside here so that we still have the color because it's inside. So we have the color, that nav going across the page. This could be an image on the right. This is just an H1 and possibly an H2, and this could be a background image. So we're going to try and do that, and we're going to start off again, heading, nav, section, and that'll all be inside a body, and we'll kind of go from there and see how that works. So let's go to Replit and go to your repels. And I'm going to go my CSC 230 W1, and I'm going to make a new folder, call it EX16, and inside there I'll make a new page called index.html, and I'll make another new file inside there called styles.css, and make sure you have things spelled right. That's why it had the weird icon there to show the right icon. And remember, when you want HTML, just use exclamation point and tab, and at least you get it started. Now I'm going to open this up in a new tab right now, and I don't have a link to it, so let's make a link to it and get that out of the way first. So that's in our root, and remember, on your root HTML you could just copy the previous. Hopefully you did your previous, and we'll just call this Wells Design Figma, or whatever you want to call it. That's fine for now, and I think that's all we need. Now back here in our index, we could just put a title, and we could just call it Wells Lawn Service, and that's in our head section. And we don't have a link to our CSS, so we need to do that. And remember, after title, we could just put link and then a tab, and then we just have to put our styles.css in there. And remember, if you're calling it style, type in style. If you're calling it styles, make sure you put the S. I'm calling it styles.css. Okay, so that's linked up. Now what are we going to put in our body? We're going to put a header tab, and then I'll put a return, and then I'll put a nav, and we can give it a class name so we can style it. So we could put nav.nav. I mean, any of these we could kind of style like this. Nav.nav, that'll give a class name of nav. And then inside here we can even put or actually inside the nav, we can put a UL. Remember how to do this. We'll do UL and then LI and curly braces, and I'll just put about. What does this say here? It says service. It starts with service. So hopefully I'm doing this right. And times 4, because we're going to have 4 buttons. And that looks about right. UL, and then there's 4 line items. And let's hit tab. That's perfect. This one will say about. And remember, if you have this preview open, you can close this. I think I'll close this for now. And after our nav, we could call it section is fine. And that's okay for now. Again, we could adjust this as we go, but we're just trying to think it out a little bit as we go here. We have our section, and then we can have a background image. We can have a right image. Now, we didn't generate any images out of here. Now, we can use the Wells one that we brought in here. Although, by the way, you can do this. I want to point out, now I'll do Control G. You can generate it from here. You can click on here, and they have an option down here to say export. And they have export Wells logo, and you can name the logo anything you want here. So if you don't want that one on it, so if I wanted to go back here, now I do have the one originally, and you could use that, but if you wanted to generate logos from here, you can do that. You can go here and say export Wells logo. Now I already have one, I think, in my download, so it's probably gonna ask about it. Now it's transparent right now, and that's fine, and I could change it to a GIF. I could do a ping if I want. I'll put it ping because I already have a GIF. So let me do that, and I'll just export that. So I could try to use that. That'll go to my downloads, and I'll just hit export, and it'll go to my downloads. And then this thing, if I click here, if I go to export, now right now it's called image right. I can keep that, that's fine. Now it's previewing as transparent. Now I can put the background in it if I wanted a JPEG. And you might say, well, it still looks transparent, but if you go to options here, you could say ignore overlapping layers. And that means it's going to kind of incorporate that green in there. That's fine, as long as we use the right green, as long as we match it up. And I'll export that, and it's a JPEG, that's fine. And then even this image over here, we could use as a background image. I'll do the same thing. I'll make it as a background image. It's called export image left. And I'll keep it a ping right now because we're going to use it as a background image. That might be okay. We'll see how that works out. Even though JPEG is usually your better option for photographic imagery, but we can use a ping and see how that works out. And I'll export that. Now they're all in our downloads right now. So what you could do is when you go back to Replit, if you go on here and add a new folder, just call it IMG. That's kind of typical. And then go to your downloads. Find those, image left, image right, Wells logo ping. I mean, you could use the GIF or that you had originally, whatever. And I'm going to drag them in here. That way you'll have access to them. I'll put them right in there. Perfect. All right, let's see what we have so far. I'll refresh this. Now I have a link. And there it is. That's all we have so far. In our header, let's see what we have. We have a logo and we have this thing. So I'm going to copy this. I'll just copy this text. And I'll go back here in our header and I'll do an h1 dot, I'll call it banner because it's in the banner. Just give it a class. It's always good to give it a class instead of just an h1. And I'll just paste it. Full service year-round property maintenance. I don't know if we need a period or not. We'll just leave it like that for now. Now also before there, we're going to have an image. So I'm going to do IMG. I'll go back up here and I'll do .logo, give it a class name of logo, and I'll hit tab. And if it doesn't work, backspace and retype, then hit tab. Or go back a little further. It doesn't like when you hit return and then go back to it. Image.logo, tab, let me just start over. img.logo, tab, there we go. And it's going to be Wells logo dash logo dot png. You just have to know that. You can go over here, check it out. Wells logo dot png. Make sure you have that right. And it's just, you can just put logo here, and that's okay. That's what it looks like up here. Now it's not working. Now that means that it's broken. So what's broken about it? It means I probably typed something wrong or it's not in the right place. What did I do wrong? Do you know? Actually, I know what I did. I didn't specify the directory that it's in. You have to specify img /. So anything that we do, any image we put on the page has to have img ahead of it because that's the folder that it's in. Now here you'd have img/img left or whatever, but we need that directory. So now when we have that, that's the way we want it. So that's okay. So that's looking okay. Now you could try to float this to the right. We could try to do a flex, any of that. We'll kind of do that when we get to the CSS. Let's just get all our copy in first and then we'll focus on the CSS. And then we have our buttons set up, so that's okay. And I mean, we have the content there for our buttons. And then we have a headline. Your property is our property. We'll get that in there. Now that's inside of section. So that's going to be a H1. And I'll just leave an H1 right now. I'm not sure what I want to call it, so I'm just going to paste it. There's an H1 in section. And then I'm going to do an H2 tab. And then I'll go and get this stuff. Now we could have done it as a paragraph as well. It's not imperative that we have it as an H2, but that's fine because it will be bold. Actually, I'm going to make it a P because it's going to make it bold if we give it a heading. So I'm going to go back and just make sure I change the opening and closing tags to Ps. That's fine. And we know they're inside a section. And we could always identify it by section space H1, section space P. But since we have other H1s, I want to make sure that I gave the other one a class name. If you want to give everything class names, that's fine too. Now, we're not putting everything in here. We don't have a footer in here. down at the bottom. We don't have a footer because remember, this page is meant to expand. This thing is kind of a template layout, so that's why it keeps going on and on like this. These are just kind of templates that people use from WordPress and things like that. They're kind of just throwing your image here, throwing your image there, and it's fine. You could learn a lot from working with WordPress, but we're just designing the landing page. We're not designing the whole thing. So we're just designing how it looks. That's what you would show a client initially. So we have kind of a newer looking logo here, a nicer looking kind of homepage here, a little more colorful kind of look, and all these kind of things you can find all these in Figma. Figma has a lot of great tools where you could just find all these little icons and things, so you don't have to build anything on your own, which is really cool. But anyway, we have, I think, all our content here. We just have to put an image on the right, which is going to be in the right side of section. So I think I'll put this over here after the paragraph. I'll just put img and I'll put dot and I'll just call it right and hit tab. And it's called imagewrite.jpg. So imagewrite.jpg. And don't forget the img / and I'll just call it imagewrite. I'm not being very specific about it. And that's all I need right now. And let's see what it looks like. And that's fine. Everything's just stacking right now because we don't really have it laid out. We haven't done any CSS. The background image, where we'll use that the image left, we'll use that as a background image. So we can look at W3 Schools to see how to do that, specify a background image. I think they actually do that in Figma. If you go over here and you inspect, sometimes they even show you using the URL of that. Let me click here. And they're actually showing it background, URL and image.png. They're showing you how to actually do that. So we can kind of look at this for a little help. And that's how background works. You basically put a background image in there for that section. And then there's different ways to position it. So we'll do that. And one thing we have to refresh ourselves is with Flex. Remember to display Flex and basically set it up in kind of 2 columns. So they're in columns instead of in rows going down. That's kind of the way they specified. So we'll have to refresh ourselves with that. Plus our buttons. We could put our buttons inline block. We want to make sure that we give this a background color so we can kind of block all that stuff out in our CSS. Do our background colors. We can even look at this and see how far over it is from the left. See, it even has left. It's 60 pixels over. So the image is 60 pixels over. Now we put a margin on there originally, but we don't have to put margin on body. We can put padding in some of these things because we don't always want a margin on body, because if we do, sometimes it moves things over, and we want some things to go right to the edge, including our nav bar should go all the way to the end and our header should go all the way to the end. So we're going to do that, but you can always go back and look at Figma to help you out. I mean, even just for size. Now, we're going to have to go and get Roboto and stuff and put that in there, and it wouldn't hurt to go and do that now. Let's do that now, and then we'll take a break and work on a CSS. So that'll be the first thing I do. So we're just going to use the Roboto family for now. So let's go to Google Fonts. You might even have it from an earlier one, but I'll go to Google Fonts. And I even have Roboto in here, but let me just close this up. And here's Roboto. And let me just go in here and let's just see what I want. In case I want, wait a minute, I still have some here. Remove all. All right. So I might want 300, so let me select that. And I might want 400. And I might want bold, which is 700 for the buttons. And I might want black for my headlines. Matter of fact, I do. So that's good for now. I'm not going to mix any other fonts other than the Roboto family right now. So if I go here, there's everything I want. I like to use the @import, and I'm just going to highlight the stuff that's inside of the style tags. And I'll just copy that. And remember, we put that at the top of our CSS. And we also might want to do a reset while we're here before we get into the more of the detailed kind of stuff. And I'll just put margin 0, padding 0. I usually put padding in if we're going to use lists and things, because sometimes it doesn't matter, but we'll put that in first. We'll do our reset, and that should be it to start. So we shouldn't need this anymore. Now remember, it has Roboto sans serif. We also have that in Figma if we need. So when we need to specify that. So that's not a big deal. It's just Roboto, it's sans serif, and we're not using Roboto slab. I'm not sure why Roboto slab is coming up here. Yeah, Roboto slab's coming up here. I didn't think I chose Roboto slab. I think I have an old one in here, so I can remove them from my CSS or just not use them. I guess that's why it's coming up. I didn't realize I had another one in here, but that's okay. We could always remove them from there. So I'm going to get out of Google Fonts. I'll go in here. If I wanted to remove Roboto Slab, I could go here to Family and just remove the Roboto Slab, I believe. That should be all I need to remove from there. And if you left it in, it wouldn't be a big deal. You just have access to those fonts if you want a Roboto Slab. All right, so let's see what we have going on here. It shouldn't be any different. We just removed our margin. All right, so what we're going to do in part 5 is we're going to start laying out the CSS, doing our buttons, doing our heading, using a little bit of flex. We'll have to refresh ourselves with that, and we'll start to make that look like this.